This is a Film Stories original podcast.
A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
Welcome to Japan on Film podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and today I am welcoming a new guest, and that is Liam Quane. Liam, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks very much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. But before we get too deep into conversations about today's movie, today we will be discussing Weathering with You, which in Japanese is known as Tenki no Ko, and it's a 2019 anime film. But before we go too deep into that, tell people a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm an author and filmmaker. I have written the science fiction title called Road to Juno, which is actually heavily inspired by one of the filmmakers' earlier works. Actually, so this film was quite personal to me in a way because it did some things that my own work does. Like it was kind of like reflected in like how much, both of us as artists were working that like what world we had to work with. So it was nice to see like some things from things I've worked with in the film and a lot of things from the films are in artwork. So it was just nice to have like synergy with another creator. So I kind of got on board with being like a major like fanboy of the very specific like line of films. And as far as the relationship with like Japanese media and culture and stuff like that, I would say one of the best things like I had as like a kid was my parents kind of let me choose what I wanted to watch personally on TV and in movies. I didn't have anything forced upon me, and everything that I happened to like watch turned out to be Japanese media. So all of it was like from Digimon, Pokemon, all the classic like kids cartoons that you don't know that from like a different country. The voices don't match. But it turns out like even so much was outsourced when I was a kid to Japan and other parts of Asia that almost everything of what I watched was like directly translated from that country. So it kind of embedded a storytelling style inside, like within me. So I'm drawn to that type of work now. Like I'm very uncomfortable with Western work. I'm actually quite uncomfortable watching certain Western pieces because it's so like off balance in a way, which makes me sound like the biggest weeb in the world, but I'm not. There's like 9 other people who are worse than me. That's it though, just 9.
Only 9, okay. But let's go back a little bit. And you mentioned that you're an author and your books. So, and you said that one of them, your book was inspired by Makoto Shinkai's one of his earlier works. Which of his movies inspired you?
It was Your Name specifically. I know it's the popular one, but it was the first one of his I'd seen. Obviously, a number of other things were part of the inspiration for it, but it was just I'd never seen a film before that just sweeps the rug out from under you because I went in completely blind to the movie. I'd stopped watching because as I said, like all the cartoons and all, they were when I was a kid. So I eventually stopped watching cartoons and all that type of thing. I didn't watch any anime as an adult or whatever. I just watched live action films as I was a becoming a filmmaker as well. And one day I watched one of those filmmaking helpful videos where it's just like, this is how you can make films, and it shows you the style of creativity from certain directors. And one of them was there's a film called Wolf Children, and that
I'm sorry, what was the name again?
Wolf Children.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was from I don't know if you've heard the director of The Girl Who Left Through Time and Summer Wars, and he just recently did Mirai and a film called Belle, which is like Beauty and the Beast. That film ended up like getting me back into Japanese animation, and then I seen a poster for a film which was just two people standing there split by a meteor, and that visual was kind of striking, and I just went like, I'll watch that. I don't know why, I'll go. I went to watch that film blind, like completely, like no details on it whatsoever, and it like kind of changed my life again for like the fifth time in a row. It was so strange, but it was great. And from that, I've like now gone back into, I feel like a kid again. I'm just on board with like Japanese film, Japanese anime, that type of thing. It's like my obsession now.
So, how did that influence Road to? If I'm mispronouncing this, please correct me. But Road to Juno?
Yes. Sorry, that was I just half answered that, didn't I? Apologies. Well, it's because the film has a very modern style to it, so it's very contemporary, but it's also very grounded. And then it brings time travel in, which I know it's a spoiler, but it could be fine. It shouldn't be that much of a problem. But it brings time travel into it in a very specifically like held together way, where it just makes so much sense in the film, even though it doesn't look like it'd be part of that world. It's like seeing the fabric of like a scarf or a band around your wrist. It's like seeing that microscopic element that makes up a story, but it like turns out to be part of the story itself. And I wanted to like make a story that could reflect exactly that, where on the surface it's a story about people going about the daily lives in a city, and then we kind of upend that and then send them to space, and then there's even like, and then send them through time and kind of question the world they're in from the beginning. But like that's it was a very specific influence because of all the it takes something completely mundane and then flips it upside down as like it's almost meta in a way, where it's like you're making the movie as you're watching it.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, Your Name was one of those movies that also really kind of surprised me as well, and it also was one. And I've said this before on the show. I'm not a huge anime fan, and especially when it comes to things. And when I do watch anime, it is stuff that is more genre based, like and more like science fiction, fantasy type of things are the kinds of genres that I'm more interested in. So like Ghost in the Shell, Cowboy Bebop, Akira, those kinds of things tend to be like the only kinds of anime that really kind of get me going. So I had completely slept on Your Name for a few years, I think. And so it wasn't until later that I finally watched it, and and I was expecting just, a simple body swap romantic comedy, and it turned into something so different from what I expected. And you mentioned the time travel aspect. The time travel aspect of it, I thought was so creative, the way that they handled it, and the whole idea of these different timelines coming together and converging and then separating out again. It made so much more sense than. And I said this a lot of times, like there are only a few time travel movies. Time travel movies are fun, and even the ones I really like Back to the Future, the time travel logic just doesn't make a lick of sense in it. But the only two that I can think of off the top of my head, I'm sure if I think about it more, I'll find more, but the only ones that really kind of fit together in terms of how the timelines work and being consistent with the rules of time travel were Avengers Endgame and Your Name. Those are like the only two that I think really establish the rules and then stick with them. It may be not so obvious at first, but as you watch it more and more times, you start to get a feel for, okay, yeah, I understand how the time travel works in here. So yeah, that's aside from the fact that it's just an utterly beautiful film. So yeah, I'm with you completely on Your Name, and I think that was like one of the last solo episodes I did of this show before we switched to the guest format, and it is one of those movies that just completely blew me away, and especially like the animation, the acting, the design work, and even the music. Like I downloaded those Radwimp songs afterwards, and I almost never
Yeah.
am interested in Japanese music.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I did the same actually. Well, when you were talking about the time travel element there, actually, that made me laugh because I I'm a twin, so like I do like have a kind of I feel like I'm a copy of someone and they feel like they're a copy of me. So that type of like multiverse split with the time thing is you are because I remember you talking about that in your episode actually where we were talking about the reverse Mobius strip and that type of thing where it's just the like matter can travel through time, but matter is also there too. So like you can't replace matter out of nowhere, that type of thing. Well, me and my twin brother, while I was writing the book, actually did end up getting into like a full-on argument over how the time travel should be handled. And to the point where we were in a kitchen, literally going like, "There'd be two people." No, there wouldn't be two people because like proper like really nerdy stuff. But it's like it just shows that these type of things do actually matter to audiences. Like it's like these are the type of things you should be arguing about when you're making things. Because as you've picked up yourself, where it's just you, like you've hung on to that time travel thing about those movies, like so it's very effective, like thing to it's something you need to get right if you want to like maintain as much of your audience as possible. Because I do agree with you as well with the how the rules are brought in and then broken, but I had to learn that very slowly. I had to learn all that. But with I remember you also on another show you were saying like you don't watch like much anime, that type of thing. A lot of people don't. It's getting more popular now, but it's mainly thanks to these films, I think. But also shonen stuff, Weekly Shonen, Jump magazine, where that was like they were the things when I was a kid. So I don't really like nostalgia. It makes me feel sick, like physically ill. I don't know why. It's just a side effect for me. I just don't like it. But I'm able to get past that by watching old things with new eyes, and that's kind of what I like about anime, where I can now look at the animation and like the detail that goes with it into that, and the work that goes into it. And these films are like top of the food chain, and the Shinkai, Makoto Shinkai films. They just the amount of work that goes into them is absolutely insane. Like there's a shot in Weathering with You where it shows you somebody a POV shot of someone looking up through a transparent umbrella, and you just see the sun coming through and the droplets coming off. And I found out recently that that was all hand drawn, and it looked like a photograph. So even the bits I thought were like CG or enhanced turned out sometimes that was like you can't. I'm not really sure about what I was watching really in a really helpful and interesting way.
Yeah, it says here that he used a mix of CG and hand drawn animation in it, and however he does it, whatever his method is, like he devotes a lot of care, especially to backgrounds, because I was and even like the tiniest things, like I was stunned by how almost photorealistic like the McDonald's hamburger case was. It's like that level of
Yeah.
specificity is amazing. And I first noticed that that was the first thing I noticed about Your Name, was watching that, just like the way that him and his animators, the way they draw the backgrounds of Tokyo and of Mitsuha's town, which I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but it's just that is like a photograph of these places in Japan. Like I have seen these places with my own eyes, and it looks almost like a photograph. It's pretty incredible. So let's and you talked about anime. I found that with a lot of people from the West who are getting into Japanese cinema, anime tends to be a pretty common gateway. And it usually starts off with, like you said, stuff that when they're young, maybe they're watching like Pokemon or something, or maybe now One Piece would be more common on TV. And maybe then they start graduating into, the films and all that. And some people, they will just kind of stay in the anime lane. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I limit the anime stuff on this podcast, because almost every season I get like 5 or 6 requests for people to come on and talk about anime films, and there's no shortage of podcasts that talk about anime. So I try to try to keep the focus more on the live action. And so with a lot of anime, that is like the most common thing. And some people, they will eventually kind of segue from that into live action stuff. And I think it's gotten a little bit easier now because there are now a lot of also live action adaptations of a lot of anime. So, people who like, I mean, not Dragon Ball. It's a bad example, but like The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, right? That was, that was a, that was an animated film as well, but then it was also made into a live action film too. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that happens. But let's,
sorry,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I actually did not mind that Dragon Ball film. I thought it was okay. I thought it was,
so you're the only one, I think.
Wrong, I am. I gave it a 5-star review when it first came out to the public. And
what was the scale of that 5-star? Was it on a scale of 50 that I can understand that?
I used to make like Facebook groups for movies, and that was one of them. And when I was like young, very young, like because I'm a millennial, but like I look like a 12-year-old. I also behave like a 12-year-old sometimes. I like to like things, and I'm like, I have like an innocence. There's an anger there too that propels the innocence forward a little bit, because I like to enjoy things, and a lot of things I seem to like become laughing stock. Like I was a big fan of like the band Nickelback, and like that become a laughing stock, and then Imagine Dragons, that become a laughing stock. Like a lot of things I find myself attaching to become like memes in a way. So I've started to like detach myself from a lot. Well, they were Western things. That was, my new thing is like My Hero Academia, and then that was kind of where the anger set in, because then that become a laughing stock to a degree. So then I started doing like podcasts and just like explaining criticisms back to people in a way, because it needed to be. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. But with the Dragon Ball movie, I wanted to like it, and I wanted everyone else to like it. So I did just say like it was perfect. Because I did really enjoy it the first time I watched it. It was only the second time I watched it that it kind of, the innocence was gone, and I went, oh, that I understand why everyone despised it. But all I wanted to see was like Piccolo firing a beam out of his hand on screen. That was enough for me, and that did it in very well. The fight scene was very good. So like, because it did that was enough for me as like a younger viewer. So 5 stars.
That's fair. I mean, I'm a big believer in. I mean, I'm one of the few defenders of Alien 3, so I totally understand. People being in a minority of overall fan opinion, and I'm a big believer in. I don't believe in the idea of guilty pleasures. I should just go ahead and enjoy what you like, and I mean, I can understand how you have that. If that's all you wanted out of the Dragon Ball movie, that's what you got, and then you were satisfied, then the movie worked for you. And I remember Kevin Smith talking on his podcast when he had like a second viewing of Batman v Superman, and he had watched it with Jason Mewes. And in the movie, as soon as the parody, and Mewes loved the movie. Smith originally hated it, but he was sitting there and he was kind of looking at Mewes and how excited he was watching it. And one of the things was, he was like, Mewes looked at him, he's like, oh, they got parademons. And that was all he wanted. He just wanted to see parademons in live action. He got that, and he was happy for that. So, more power to you if that's all you wanted
Cool.
out of it.
Yeah, that's
But
great.
anyway,
No, I like hearing that. I like hearing that because that's like it's like kind of I like that other people like just can still do that because with the age of the internet, we're kind of not forbidden to do it, but it's frowned upon, isn't it, to like kind of not dislike things because we've all been like trained by like algorithm stuff, haven't we? Of like hate videos get more views, don't they? So like that's like kind of infected culture somewhat. So you're just
oh yeah.
being like, if you just go on like Twitter now, which is just a bad idea anyway, you just go on the film discussion thing and it's just everyone making mockeries of all the releases, which some of them I absolutely understand, but we are being like trained into like go negative there, and that's a bit concerning. But it's you know you do what you do. I am
Yeah.
like a sorry, go on, go on.
No, go ahead. You finish your thought.
Well, I was going to go on to a different thing. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say that, don't go on Twitter. It's always a mistake. I mean, I think social media in general seems to have been mostly a mistake. I don't think it's really
yeah,
caused a lot of good. And
no,
that's one
that's
of the
true.
reasons why, and I've said this before on my other podcast, that one of the things I like about doing these podcasts is it gives me a chance to engage with these movies in a much more nuanced way than social media or like a limit of 140 or whatever it is now on Twitter will let you get it in. So, and it is nicer to kind of have these formats where we can really kind of engage with the work instead of just only focusing on things we hated about it or only focusing on things that we loved. And I think, taking a more nuanced view of things.
Right, and with these films, that's like it comes in spades. Like as I said, I know I'm like a fanboy for it, but I honestly like I've read you can read so much into the film because it's kind of it's got a hands-on approach with like the making of, but with when you're watching it, it feels like there's a hand off it somewhere where it's just playing out in like there's like a fatalist drama, but the world seems so big and open that the things on screen could mean like a lot of different things. It's like there's so much depth to the actual work that comes from the insert, like as you said, with the backgrounds and stuff like that. There's so many shots in the film that don't need to be there, but just are inserted, and it just helps the thing feel bigger as a project.
Yeah, so that's a good way to transition into this movie. Again, it's Weathering with You was the English title. The Japanese original title was Tenki no Ko, which the literal translation is Child of Weather, and written and directed by Makoto Shinkai, and came out in 2019. And this was his follow-up to, I'm pretty sure it was his follow-up to Your Name. And he had
Yeah.
said about it that, I just had the quote here. Let me find it here. Oh yeah, he said that, I thought, should I make my next film so that I don't anger more people, or should I make a movie that angers them further? And I chose the latter. So, which I actually don't. Maybe I'm missing something here, or maybe there's something specific to the context of Tokyo. Which maybe when I say that now, I'm starting to argue with myself. So we can get into that a little bit more. But one of the things that he really wanted to touch on here was the impact of climate change in Japan. And you can see that with the idea of all this strange weather that's constantly happening all over the place. There's also the comment that the older woman makes about how, when we were kids, kids today, they don't get to enjoy the kind of summers that we used to enjoy when we were kids. So that's kind of like I think the criticism of climate change or human inaction on climate change seems a bit muted in light of that. I feel like he's not really quite hitting that tone. But another thing about it too is you mentioned Your Name a lot. This ties into Your Name because we do have the two main characters from Your Name appear here. Mitsuha appears as she's working in a store, and she sells Hodaka this ring that he wants to give to Hina, and also we see Taki too from Your Name, and he is going to visit his grandmother, who has hired Hina to bring sunshine on the anniversary of her husband's death, which is a kind of a big thing in Japan. Whenever they have the anniversary of a relative's death, there's usually some kind of, sometimes just a shrine visit, sometimes like a luncheon type thing, or some sort of, memorial type of thing will be done typically.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah. So now I was very excited the first time I saw this movie, and it's a good movie. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie or anything like that, but I did find myself comparing it to Your Name a little bit unfavorably. I feel like, and it might just be, my expectations were set so high after Your Name that nothing could have ever possibly lived up to it. But Your Name, impressed me on a massive level. And it really, like, from the first frame into the last, it just really kind of grabs you and it doesn't let go. And you're really left to sit with the movie once it's over. And I'm not ashamed to say, like, I cry. Like, I've seen that movie maybe half a dozen times. I cry every time. It's a very moving story. Weathering with You is a perfectly fine movie, but it never hits those same highs as Your Name.
Yeah. In contrast, it is a bit of it's a colder film. Like, it is. There's darker themes of like ugly, like the ugly mafia, CDM mafia style. Like, what are these? Like, they're not yakuza, but the kind of like they're not yakuza people, are they? The kind of criminal element in it where there's like gun imports going on. Like, they're not gangsters, but they're just like low life people hanging around like creepy clubs or whatever. So that struck me a bit when I first seen it, because it was just like, it was so different. Like, but that's what Shinkai does that with a lot of his films, where there's like he has like this like darkness that he's like held back for some of the more popular ones. But when you see like Children Who Take Lost Voices from Below, that is a very dark, like bloody film that, like, comes with the score that like is just eerie and upsetting, especially towards the end, where it like captures the Ghibli, not cruelty. Ghibli doesn't have a cruelty to it, but it has this like mature, almost like weathered attitude towards life. And like, yeah, there's cruel, someone's being eaten there, like there's blood there, like someone's died over there, it's war. Like, and this is just what happened. And it was almost like that's what Weathering with You was trying to do. I read a quote earlier actually that said, and this is where I like I respond to the anger, where it said, usually there's a lot of stories about like, someone getting kidnapped and then they get saved at the end, and there's the righteous stories. But with climate change, it's very obvious that, the people in charge are not going to do anything about it. So it would be irresponsible and even like cruel to have this movie have a younger generation fix climate change that adults have brought about and are not going to stop in real life. So it was more made to help them adapt, because it's like, it's not that, it's like a film of reassurance for younger people who like are faced with a darker future than a lot of people have had themselves, which is, it's very bleak way of looking at things, but that's like kind of the truth, and that's where a lot of the anger comes from. Because I don't know whether he has children or not, but he seems like he's like connected empathetically with the younger generation. And I think one of the worst phrases I've ever heard in my life, and it's actually what it's like a hint at my next work, is the children will save us, or like Gen Z or Z will save us. That makes me so furious, that phrase. I hate it so much, because it is so cowardly and so just stupid. It's dumb. And I've seen that in so many like tweets. I've seen it in so many magazine headlines, like newspaper headlines. Just people are like clinging on to this hope of the kids are all right, and it's just, no, they're not. no one's going to be okay. It's not up for debate. Even rich people won't be happy. Like, so I like the fact that this film went that way and went like, no, I'm sorry. Like, it's written out in stone. So here's what you can think while you're going through it, as in a reassuring kind of way. It's very, as I said, very dark, but it seems a bit mature that way.
Yeah. So on the question of Shinkai's parentage, he is married to Misaka Chieko, who she was in Versus actually, which we talked about last season. Yes, yeah, and they have one daughter, and she's an actress herself, Chise Nitsu, and she was born in 2010. So she was about 9 years old when this movie came out. So there is that aspect of it, and I think you're probably right. There is probably some ideas he's working with and what kind of world his daughter is going to have to inherit, and I think that's kind of working with him. And you had mentioned the guys in the water trade business, the Mizu Shobai, the club guys, and I do want to talk about that because that is one of the important aspects, I think, of what I see as a criticism Shinkai's making about Tokyo and kind of like these big urban centers in Japan. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. So we'll be right back after this.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Are you ready to dairy-free your mind? This summer, melt away your dairy-free expectations with So Delicious dairy-free frozen desserts. Enjoy mind-blowing flavors like salted caramel cluster, chocolate cookies and cream, cookie dough, and more. For over 35 years, So Delicious has been cranking up the flavor with show-stopping products that are 100% dairy-free, certified vegan by Vegan Action, and are so unbelievably creamy, your taste buds will do a double take. Dairy-free your mind. Visit SoDeliciousDairyFree.com.
And we are back, still talking about Weathering with You. Now, right before the break, you had mentioned about these two recruiters, these two solicitors who are trying to convince Hina to work for their club. And this is something I want to talk about. Like, so you said that they're not. You at first you'd use mafia, and then you'd said, well, they're not quite yakuza, but they are like these low life types. And yeah, this is what is known in Japan as the Mizu Shobai business, or basically the water trade. And it's a kind of euphemism that's used to describe basically all the nighttime entertainment in Japan. So which ranges from completely legal to completely illegal to shades of illegality in the middle. So the way, and so this refers to things like, obviously you're just regular bars or all that, but you also have these clubs, snack bars, hostess bars, cabaret clubs, which there's not really a similar concept I can think of in the West. But what it typically is you're basically going in there and you are paying to have girls talk to you, essentially, is what it is. And you got these, they usually have these beautiful young women working there who are wearing like these kind of like prom style dresses or wedding dresses, or they're like themed ones, like they're like maid cafes and those types of things. And maid cafes are also not necessarily part of this, but that's a similar kind of idea. And basically you're paying for their company. So you're paying a fee. They are trying to entice you to. And usually what it works is you pay the set fee. It's like whatever it is for an hour, and it's nomi hodai, or all you can drink. So you can drink all you want, but whenever the girls want to buy a drink, you have to pay for their drinks too. So that's usually kind of how they get you, is they get you drunk, then they get you to pay for things like, buying the girls' drinks, buying bottle service for the table, buying food. Those types of things are things that they have on there. And these places are completely legal. Like, there's basically, for the most part, there's nothing on the surface, there's nothing necessarily illicit about any of this, but it can kind of veer into an illicit realm because there are instances where these girls will meet customers outside of work for dates. And again, those can be chased. I've actually known some women who have worked in these places, and for the most part, these dates are just they go out to lunch or dinner or something like that with a customer, and that's it. It's just basically a way to keep the relationship going, maybe get some gifts out of the customer, get them to keep coming back to the bar, that kind of thing. But it can veer in. Sorry, go ahead.
Thing. Like a sugar daddy type thing, but like informal.
In a way, not quite, because sugar daddy is, an explicitly sexual relationship. This is not necessarily that. Yeah. This is not necessarily a sexual relationship. It can be, and that's where we start to get into the shades of illegality territory, because there are hostesses, there are cabaret girls who will sleep with customers, and that is the way that the prostitution laws work in Japan. Is vaginal prostitution is illegal, oral and anal are not, but there is also this idea of like, if something happens, if there's an arrangement made between the customer and the girl, that is their own arrangement they are doing. That is not something that the club is endorsing or anything like that. So that's kind of like how it's kind of like a backdoor prostitution, backdoor to the prostitution law. And there are also these other loopholes, like in massage clubs or things like that, massage parlors, where there are the soapland ones where they're doing bath massage type things, which usually end in sexual services of some kind. And again, the whole idea is like, hey, well, if some vaginal penetration occurs, that is an agreement that you and the girl made on your own. That's not us. So this is where it gets in the kind of like the illegality side of things, where there are a lot of these places that are basically fronts for prostitution, sometimes very transparent fronts. It's like almost it's almost like completely see-through. And so, and that kind of is the impression I get from here with this scene with Hina and these two guys, because they're trying to entice her to work for these clubs. And this happens with a lot. There is a great documentary on Netflix about this industry several years, this is like maybe 10 or more years ago, but it was called The Great Happiness Place or The Great Happiness Space, one of those two. And it was about host bars. So it was about men who offer these services to women. But a lot of the women that they were talking to who were clients of these hosts, many of them were hostesses or prostitutes themselves. So it's a very strange industry. But if you watch that documentary, it gives a pretty good overview of kind of like the basics of this. And so that's one of the things I notice here, because we also have this idea of Hodaka running away from his hometown. He comes from this small town, and he says that he ran away because he felt like all this pressure from being in that small town. And there is almost this kind of dream that's, not all young people, but a bunch of young people have, about this romanticization of places like Tokyo and Osaka, where they think like, oh, I'm going to move to the big city, it's going to be so great. And it's often not. And I think maybe where Shinkai was thinking he'd be angering people is probably in the depiction of Tokyo, because I think that his Tokyo in this movie seems to be one that is not a great place to live. And I feel like the way the treatment of children is a big part of this. So we see that with, Hina is 15 years old. She is lying about her age so that she can work more, because there are labor laws limiting the amount of work that people under the age of 18 can do. So she is lying about her age, but for her to, be courted by these recruiters, because the drinking age in Japan is 20. So I'm not 100% certain on this, but I could be wrong, but I believe that most of these clubs technically you have to be 20 years old. You have to be of drinking your age yourself to be able to work in them. So they already know that they're breaking the law by talking to her, but I don't think that they really care that much. And I think there's a lot of illegality when it comes to those types of arrangement and stuff that is kind of looked the other way in a lot of this. So there was, and just coincidentally, I was reading a story last night about a former Japanese politician who had been found to be having sex with a 12-year-old in a karaoke box. And he had met her like in the hall of the karaoke place, and he had offered her some money to come do karaoke, and then the staff was kind of worried. So they had them in a room that was nearby, and they went in, they found them, having sex together. And so he was arrested, he was charged, but he got a suspended sentence because he had made an apology and a cash payment. So it's ridiculous, like the way that there's a lack of protection in a lot of these places, especially when it comes to the involvement of powerful or connected people. And I see that with the treatment. So I see that with the treatment of Hina, and how, she is lying about her age. She's trying to make this money. You also see that with Hodaka, who he goes to Tokyo, this idea of, starting a new life and everything. And he ends up, in pretty dire straits right from the start. And he has to, and he gets lucky, he gets saved by Keisuke. But if it was, his story could have turned out in a much worse fashion than just, working for a semi-shady magazine publisher.
Yeah. There is a lot of ways to look at these films, but on reflection, there's a lot of ways to look at Tokyo and Japan itself. Like, a lot of places have reputations that precede them, and they tend to be bullshit. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable using any of those like bars at this time in my life or anything, just because it comes with a reputation that I wouldn't like to be blending myself in with. And it's like, the geisha thing. Everyone's thought like gay people are now like trying to solicit geishas, which that's not what they're for. And like there's that warped reputation of it, and now that's led to like Kyoto limiting tourist areas and like areas of tourism as punishments, just because people don't seem to learn a lesson, which is very strange. But it's, as I said, dark world, that type of thing. But this film in particular, I like the gun usage, because like when I was seeing the guns in the film, that shocked me, because it was like, it's supposed to be about the weather, like, and then you bring guns into it like very early on. So when that happened, that was like, I don't know, it almost felt like it was kind of trying to point a finger at America, like, because America's like kind of a big part of like how, isn't it like a big part of how Japan conducts itself on a geopolitical scale. So I don't know whether it's like a metaphor for like kind of American interference, like within the, it's getting closer and closer and more grounded, that American interference isn't just geopolitical anymore. It could be like, it's even on the street, like with weapons being funneled in, because I know they're probably getting them from like Russia or somewhere because it's closer, and it was like the gun itself was like a Russian weapon. But I don't know, America's kind of iconic for its gun usage. So whenever I see guns and things, I always just think like it's a reflection of like American influence. It's just an interpretation.
I'm not so sure if I completely agree with that, just because there isn't a lot of, there is some degree of American influence on Japan, but Japan's kind of world presence is very kind of muted in general. Like, for the most part, Japan doesn't get too overly involved in global affairs. So, I mean, obviously they do have, trade and stuff with other countries. They do some stuff overseas, but it's not a big focus. I mean, there are domestic issues with the American influence in the Japanese government, but I don't think. I mean, Japan's been pretty good on climate change, especially in comparison to America. So I don't think there's been a whole lot of like American influence in that way that is causing these kinds of situations. So yeah, I'm not so sure if I would completely agree with that. I think it's just that a gun is a very kind of useful way for him to get himself in hot water very easily, because guns in Japan are super illegal. So, and like even the Yakuza will not use guns unless they absolutely have to, because it's just like using a gun is like asking for a prison sentence. So it's one of those things that it's, so for him to pull a gun, I think it is because it is so shocking. It is because it is so unusual. It is because it is such a break from the social norms, and because it does end up causing all these other problems for him. So I think it's just a very kind of useful image for people in Japan to realize, like, okay, this guy's got himself in some deep shit now.
Oh, that's cool. I do want to clarify, though, that these aren't necessarily things I like completely believe it. These are just like readings that I was compiling, like different. I always say, like, a lot of you can watch a film in different ways through many lenses, and it's just like, like if I don't know if you have glasses or whatever, like you go to the opticians and you go to the doctor, and it just they test the multiple lenses on you and say that one or that one, that one or that one. This is just like one of the lenses, really, because this, as I said, this film's got a lot of layers to it, and there's certain things that if you look at it through like a political lens or a socio-political lens, it comes up with like a different story that you could take from it. Like another example of this is every time a heavy downpour comes in the movie, somebody gets hit with bad financial news. So it's almost like, the cruelty of like hypercapitalism is drowning these people, like in a specific way. Like, as in, I'm not saying that's the intent, but I'm saying like that's like a way to read the film, because that does happen. When you see like Suga in his car or not, and he's making the call to see his daughter and stuff like that. He loses a client just before that, and that's when like the one of the middle rainstorms hits. Is he loses a client for a project, and then after that it happens again, and it's when he gives Hadoka the money to run it with a severance fee, so Hadoka loses his job. Like, and this happens a lot consecutively with these big rain like storm moments where it just so happens to come with a financial issue with it. So that was one of the things I was thinking about last time I watched it, actually, because there is this one of the things I like about Japanese media is it focuses, its politics are more in line with mine. Like, it's why I like My Hero Academia so much, because its politics are like spot on aligned with mine. And a lot of Japanese media seems to not stray into the Western individualist path, where you need to be separate from everyone and better than everyone, and the villain is one single individual who is like this, and you dethrone them and you become king. Like, I don't like that narrative. It's very dangerous and has proven to be like an issue, and to the point where, like, when climate change is like coming in and like everyone's getting boxed in with things, a lot of people are finding it hard to like latch onto that narrative. So I think Japan's collectivist style like storytelling, not entirely, like I'm being broad, but like a lot of what I watch from Japan and Asia in general, a lot of the things I do watch have this coming together to solve the problem. Like, the film I actually contacted you about was Godzilla -1. And that's like the one that ends with them like kind of ignoring the government and just using, their own collective manpower. And I'm glad I didn't get to talk about that film, actually, because it would have been redundant, because I listened to your episode about that, and you are the only one who specifically has given the answer I had about what the film means. that I've heard, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts on it, and like I was really happy that someone's finally like like because you got past the PTSD Survivors Guild thing that a lot of people like have latched onto with that film, and you went further, and I was really happy to hear that, because that I've been like listening to a lot of shows just give the same answer, but no, it's bigger. It's a lot bigger than that. Like the character, the creature, that type of thing. And you like said it was like war in general, like imperialism in general, and that was like helpful for me. Like, and that's one of the reasons why like I was so adamant to actually come on the show, because I was like, it was like just good to see somebody able to engage with film, with media a bit like further in than just the surface level stuff. And I chose Weathering with You because it has a lot of these elements that you can engage with, like not just the weather, but like the absence of like the rain tells its own story, but there's also like a little descriptive hint in the background, like Hadoka's reading he's reading Catcher in the Rye. And Catcher in the Rye, have you ever read Catcher in the Rye?
Long time ago. My memory is definitely faded of it.
Well, yeah, I read it after watching this movie to see like how it connects and stuff. And that, I think that book has got a lot of people hooked onto the idea that it's all fake, like the weather, like the weather manipulation and stuff like that is all fake. Because Catcher in the Rye features like a subplot where the main characters acting out very specific, like dramatic scenes, but it's all fake. So I think that's led some specific critics to say the movie is all a dream, all in the character's head. I don't like that interpretation. It's kind of a waste of the film then.
Yeah, I definitely I did not get that from this film at all, that it was all a dream or anything like that. No, that I don't think that I'm not sure how you'd even find that reading. That is not something I took from it at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, on the whole idea of, I think there is also a kind of criticism of authority in here, because when we do see the way that authority responds to these situations, well, I mean, first off, we do have the whole idea of, you mentioned Kyoto before, and I think that's an interesting comparison to bring up here, because you do have this kind of commercialization of tradition here, because Hina is one of these weather maidens who are part of this cultural tradition in Japan, as we find out from the shrine priest that talks to Keisuke and Natsumi. And then we see that because Hina is using her powers like this over and over and over again, she is breaking apart, right? She is losing cohesion. She's disappearing. So like this idea of this over commercialization of culture and tradition is, I think, another type of maybe smaller subplot or more of a subtle theme that Shinkai might be playing with here. Because you definitely see that in places like Kyoto, where now they've had to have this pushback and they've had to start imposing restrictions on tourism, and now they've started having to put up signs in places like telling people how to behave at tourist spots, which should be common knowledge, but tourists in a lot of the tourists I've seen tend to be assholes, and that and they just they don't have this kind of respect for a lot of these places. And I think that, and there is this idea of, we are going to exploit our culture so that we can get more money from tourists, is kind of what is happening. I think that because they are doing this business where they're exploiting Hina's powers so that she can, clear up the weather for things like, cosplay contest, or a business that wanted like a clear day for an event or something like that this is damaging not only to this cultural idea, but it's also damaging. It's also, and this we can also see like the influence of capitalism on climate change in general, because the whole reason that we are struggling with climate change, I mean, there was a report I remember reading recently where they had analyzed they looked at the potential of solar power, and the biggest downside they could find for solar power is that there's not enough of a profit incentive for it. They can't, basically, we can't use solar power because the companies can't make enough money off of it. So it's not worth it then if people can get free energy. And that was kind of the idea.
Yeah.
And that's this, this capitalist exploitation of the environment for further exploitation, which is only accelerating the problem, which we can see happening here in this movie.
We can also see it happening with like on Hina in a personal level. It's like her job is literally like killing her, like working, like she's being worked to death in a way, like quote unquote. But yeah, that is a really like good way of looking at it, because it is like the major question of our times is just what we're gonna do. How are we going to like shift to a new phase of like living? I say we, but how are other people going to shift to a new phase of living? And well, that was kind of in line with what the film was asking, like how are the younger generation going to shift, because they are being forcefully moved. Like, make no mistake, like so many all the adults in this film are kind of assholes to some degree. There's nicer versions. Like Natsumi is the actress who played her said she thought she was the most mature out them all, because she like understands both the generations. But I think definitely. I think that's more of a reflection of like the writer. I think he's around her age, so I think it's like he sees it as like being caught in the middle, like the middle child type thing. And from that, we see like the young. It's like it's not just like, it wasn't just like Hina and all. It was the youngest character. She has her brother, and her brother's kind of, he's like almost like a full adult, like the way he behaves, the way he like presents himself, and like to the point where he's even like talking down to Hadoka, like saying like these are the basics, which I thought was really funny. But like it's like these kids have like been forced to grow up too soon. And when the adults in there kind of make a lot of the wrong decisions, and they're supposed to be the responsible ones. So like the big fear moment in the film is when an adult finally like stands up to the other adults who are like trying to bring in, like, it may be like for an own safety thing, but there's like, they don't know everything. Like Hadoka, it turns out this was confirmed afterwards, but Hadoka's father was physically abusive. Like, it's why in the dream he says he's like pedals to the edge of the cliff, and it turns out it wasn't a dream. And he sees the sunbeam going across the water. He's got like plasters all over his face because like his dad is physically aggressive with him. So that plays into it, where like that, you understand where all the gunshots come from immediately the second like he's touched, but like attacked by any adult figure punches him, he shoots their gun, like which obviously brings a lot of internal thoughts of what he wanted to do to his father, and that's not even in the movie. You know what I mean? There's like a layer that you can get that's not even in the plot.
Yeah, I had not picked up on that, but I think that does make a lot of sense. And that is another example of this theme of kind of the authority figures in this world constantly failing the kids. I mean, you do have, right, the police are coming after, Hina and Hodaka, but it's not because of, the scumbag, solicitor who was trying to get a teenage girl to work in his club. Nothing happens to him. He's just like, they're just like, no, we just want to talk to you. We just want to ask you some questions. Keisuke, well-intentioned though he might be, is also, he's also exploiting Hodaka's labor, basically, right? He says, like you said with Natsumi, she calls him out on it. She's like, this is like, you're like you're running a black company, essentially, which is a euphemism in Japan for these kinds of companies that are abusive or pay low wages or overwork their employees. And that's exactly what he's doing to Hodaka. I mean, he tries to justify it by saying, well, look, I'm giving him free room and board and everything. I'm paying for his meals, paying for his phone, but it is still just, he is kind of, and he does to his credit, he does kind of realize it in the end, but also there is this aspect of the social services, right? They are obviously well-intentioned, but, depriving Keisuke of his daughter is not really doing much, because by all intents, he may not be the best guy, but as far as we can see, he seems to be a pretty decent dad. And it's just like these little tiny things they're trying to say, like, well, this, that you don't check off everything on our list of what makes a good father. So that means we have to keep your daughter away from you. Or with, again, with Hodaka's father, like you mentioned, that's another thing, right? The police are after him to send him back to an abusive environment, which is, which is very problematic. And, there is,
absolutely.
And I'm not saying like the solution is running away, but it is this idea that, and this brings in something else I was thinking of, which, have you heard of the Toyoko Kids phenomenon in Tokyo?
I've heard. It's not the biker gang thing, but it's like is it like a new version of like the biker gang thing, where it was like the Akira style punk thing, or is it something different?
No, it's not. It's like this. These are, it's a group of marginalized, homeless, young people who are gathering around in the back alleys of the Shinjuku Toho building in Kabukicho. So Toyoko means it's shorthand for saying next to Shinjuku Toho building. And basically it's a mix of, a bunch of different people. Like there are some who are permanent runaways. There are some who are seeking, help or protection from bullying. And then some of them, they do end up going into the nightlife and the sex industry as a way to make money. And so again, and a lot of them, they come from all over Japan. Like there are people who come from Osaka and Nagoya for this too, but there have been other similar types of neighborhoods forming in other cities as well. And this kind of shows this kind of like the marginalization of youth, and how the authority is not really responding to the problems that these kids are facing, right? Some of them are running away because of abuse. Some of them are running away because of bullying. Some of them are just running away because they just feel, left behind by this society. Like you talked about the collective stuff, and there's a dark side to that too, where this idea of if you don't fit into the idea of what a Japanese person is supposed to be, then you are excluded from that. So there are these ideas, and so this has become a real issue in many of these places. But there's not a lot of solutions that are really addressing the root cause of these problems. Like they've tried to set up like counseling centers, but those aren't. You still got these root problems that are not being addressed here, and I think we kind of do see that too with the way that the police and social services respond to the things that these people are going through here.
Yeah, sounds it. That's really like fascinating, because it's almost like it's like this like gang mentality but it's not really. It's like a force, not commune, but it's like it is kind of a forced like commune thing, like where everything's like forced. I've noticed like things are just forced. Like the like a full on like lifestyle overhaul is like more acceptable. That like even like homelessness is more acceptable to some people because the dire straits they're in, and that the film itself, like I like how it gives. It almost like it's almost didactic. It gives a way of like fixing things a little bit, where it's just it's the most heartbreaking line in the film but it is some of a solution. Where it says, he says, "Dear God," like when they're in the hotel and they have food and they have like karaoke stuff, and then they have a bath and a bed, and it says like, "This is all we need. Please let us have this, and please don't take any more things from us." And it's just like whittled. It shows like how like the generation like in the future, like their way of life is just going to be, they're going to be lucky to have the simple things. That's what it's kind of painting, that type of picture where it's saying like, this is all that people need really in life, like especially when they've been pushed to a point, a breaking point. So it's kind of like, it's like almost telling the audience to give them these things the way it's like presented, because it's kind of it done in a heartbreaking way where like there's guilt attached to it, where like you don't want to be the one who makes these people feel this way. So yeah, this is how you fix it. You know what I mean? Like they just want food, they just want shelter, they just want a bath, they just want, friends. So, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, it's broad, but as I said, like it's broad, but it's still like kind of pointing at the audience and saying like in simple terms, like this is what it takes and that's it. These things.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point too. I think that there is this idea that this system is just taking everything from them until they really don't really have much left. And so now, what do you think about the scene when he finds Hina he goes through the Torii Gate and he goes in the sky, and he tells Hina that she let go of her worries about the weather and start living for herself. And then then they get arrested, and then the rains start up again. What did you think about that scene? Because I'm kind of mixed on that.
Yeah, well, that was when I first watched it. I did think like this isn't really a positive message when I first watched it, and it said like the world. I'd rather have you than I'd rather the world be crazy and you still be in it, that type of thing. So it was like that when I was thinking like about the didactic messaging and all that I was getting from my first watch, I was getting that. And then when that come out, I was going like, how much does that blend in? Is this telling people like don't care, don't try and stop things? But I think it was more of it turns out a reflection of that because it's like kind of destined to be their future. Here's how you cope with it. Like it's more reassuring for the kids, for the young people watching the film. Like, yeah, this thing's gonna happen, but at least you'll have each other because this thing is already set to happen. Which again, very dark, very bleak, but there's it's like it's also kind of helpful in its way. Where it's when I first seen it, I was more focused on the visuals and the song, and like I'm not ashamed to say, like, because I'm a filmmaker and film director and stuff like that, I cry at the drop of a hat. I taught myself how to cry so I could teach actors how to cry, and that kind of just breaks you. Then you there's no like stopping it. You cry at the drop of a hat at like TV ads for like dish soap, and just like a single tear comes down my face if someone says a line a specific way. It's just like keys into that. So I was just a mess when that scene was on. And then somebody next to me in the theater, actually, because I watched I went to the film festival premiere to watch this one, which I've never been to a film festival before, never been to the country it was held in before. It was held in Scotland, which is the north part of the UK. I'd never been there before, and I went to watch it in like the distributors film festival called Scotland Loves Animation. And when I was watching that scene, somebody started drumming along with the song that started off, the big exciting song, and I just like found myself slowly, like tearfully turning my head very slowly and just like glaring at them until they stopped. So I must have looked like kind of not insane, but like fuck it, insane. Yeah. a little bit, because it was just this really slow burn of stop moving right now, because it was I was like, it was so like such a big and emotional scene that when somebody like breaks you out of it, that's one of my like pet peeves, where it just gets me like 0 to angry in like no time at all, because it's not just rude, it kind of defeats the purpose of even being at the place. Like, I didn't pay to see some like moron just flapping about, that type of thing. So when I first seen that scene, it was very like, I was a bit like broken from it, and like got back in it, and then broken from it, and then got back in it. So I was just taking the message at like face value, like so that's what they're saying, like it's just dialogue. But now that I watch it again, like I've watched it like 100,000 times, the movie, but like I kind of now I'm not that judge. Like, I don't judge it that harshly, just because it just feels like that empathy is coming through again. And that was a long-winded way of just saying, yeah, I think it was just they were trying to be as empathetic to the younger generation as they can, and that means saying something that older generation will not understand, which I didn't understand it, like, but I do truly believe that it was like something done with the best intentions of you need to learn to like adapt, because that just looks like it's going to be a destiny for you. Like, it's terrible, but I just think that's the message. How about you?
Yeah, I see that, but I don't know. I feel like the movie doesn't good. I get it, but I don't quite like the execution. I think that the idea that this is something they have to live with, these are the consequences they have to accept. I get that. I get that a lot, and I'd be fine with that, but I feel like the movie doesn't do a good enough job of telling us that they have no choice in this. They have to just kind of accept it as reality, and they can't stop it. I feel like the movie almost makes a point of saying that he does have the chance to reverse it, and he is deliberately making the choice not to do that. And I feel like I don't like that message is the thing about it. I feel like if there was something in there saying that, if we had heard from the priest or something like that saying, even if she sacrifices herself, it still won't be enough, the damage is already done, then I can understand him pulling her back and saying, like, we just have to accept the way this is, right? This idea of like, you can't, it's futile to sacrifice yourself for this, because it's not going to work. Instead, we have to just figure out mitigation. I think that is a very accurate message to the situation we're facing now, because we are now past the point of climate change prevention, and we are now in the era where we have to figure out climate change mitigation. And I feel like the movie doesn't get, I think that's what the movie is trying to say, but I don't think it's really doing I don't think it really sticks that landing with that scene. And that's kind of where I land on it.
I see what you mean. Yeah, because it's kind of the way it goes about it is very like it's not it's because it's so melodramatic and it's emotion based, isn't it? So it's like it like brings in its own metaphors. So it doesn't really address it with like kind of a boardroom mentality of, all right, this is a bigger picture thing. Here's this, and this. Here's all the pieces that are moving, and so like it gives them an out somewhat. So you'd rather them have like a little like out, like more of a. But like as you said, it was a good point when you said like like the sacrifice won't be enough. Like that is, yeah, I do understand that, because that's like kind of, it makes the gesture less self-serving and more like as climate change is, because it's not the choice of children, the climate change, whereas this film makes it the choice of children, doesn't it? It is very like tricky thing to cover, because I in my work, I personally wouldn't write that type. In my work, I'm very. My work features a lot of sacrifice and a lot of not so much hardship, but like a broad look at the world and things people go through, and it's very no nonsense. Like there's a lot of comedy in my work, but I also have like fixes for things, and it is like I'm right. No, like it's right. This is what you do. This is what you do. This is it. Like you have no other choice. This is the way it's gonna go. So you have to do this. And that's like yep. And that's again. This is what I liked about the work, because it's kind of it was no nonsense in a way. Like I'll just get to like a final point where it's a lot of the preliminary work for this movie ends up going into Suzume. So like Suzume itself is like kind of darker visually, and like it's got like scarier themes, but that is more of a hopeful feature than this one. So it's kind of that seems to be like the original intention for this, but then darkness over this one. Like, so I think the anger took too much to this one, but Suzume kind of does give a happier way of like bringing mitigation into the conversation about like climate change and stuff like that. So it's like kind of a nice journey.
Okay. All right. I think that's a good note to end on. So before we finish up, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Okay. My name is Liam Quane, and I am on Blue Sky. You can find me. I've got a verified Blue Sky profile, which is nice. And it's specificityarchive.com is the app, but you can just find me by searching my name. And I'm also on a site called Vero, which is like, it's kind of like Instagram, but good. Like it's an ethical Instagram. It's very brilliant. I love it. That's the main place to hang out at. That's at liam.quane. And if you anybody's, I'm not here to like pitch books or sell books, but if you want to check out my work, if you like any of these movies, they're similar. So you can if you want, or just follow or just watch the films of filmmakers I like. That'll be enough. Watch things I want you to. That'll be nice.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for coming on. And as for us, we are japanonfilm.com, and that is the website, and Japan on Film on Blue Sky. But we are also on Threads and Instagram, although over there it's just pretty much the announcements being posted up. And we are part of the Film Stories podcast network. So please listen up and check out what is coming up next on the network. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
The Japan on Film podcast is produced by me, Perry Constantine, in conjunction with the Film Stories Podcast Network. Visit japanonfilm.com for show notes, episodes, and information about being a guest yourself. You can also reach out to me on the website's contact form if you have questions or comments about Japanese movies or the show itself. The show is at Japan on Film on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, so please be sure to follow us. If you'd like to support the show, you can donate on japanonfilm.com, purchase from our advertisers, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Film Stories Podcast Network Discord from the link in the show notes to connect with me and many other cinema fans and podcasters.
This episode is brought to you by FX's Alien Earth, the official podcast. Each week, host Adam Rogers is joined by guests, including the show's creator, cast, and crew, in this exclusive companion podcast. They will explore story elements, deep dive into character motivations, and offer an episode-by-episode behind-the-scenes breakdown of each terrifying chapter in this new series. Search FX's Alien Earth wherever you listen to podcasts.